You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Here we go.
Welcome once again to the Grantcast, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grant Baciocco. It is a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for subscribing. And a big shout out to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who make this show possible. Seriously, if it wasn't for them, you would not be hearing this. You would not be hearing me talking, at least in this manner, right now. So to find out more about that, stay tuned. We'll talk about that at the end of the episode. Well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about the election. I know in the last episode I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. Years ago, this was probably, I would say, early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, I was a substitute teacher. And I substitute taught basically in this one school district in Southern California. And after a little bit of bouncing around from school to school, I got in at this one school where the principal really, really liked me and liked me as a substitute. And they just decided to sort of make me the permanent substitute for the school. So I almost had a daily job because it was an elementary school, but there would always be like one teacher who couldn't make it. And so I would step in for that. And it was a great experience. And what was so fun about it was, as I'm sure you know, as a substitute teacher, you sometimes get a little pushback from the kids. And what was great about this job was, since I was a regular person at this school, I got to know all the kids and they knew me. And although they were very excited when Mr. Grant came to substitute teach in their class, they also knew that I knew their teacher and I wasn't a regular sub who was not going to be there the next day. I was going to be there the next day. And if they were acting like clowns, I was going to tell their teacher that they were acting like clowns. So it was a great job. And I did that for several years. I should probably look at a timeline to see what it was, how many years I did this. But after a couple of years, the teachers, this principal took me aside, and this school was year-round. Now, I think a lot of schools are year-round now, but this was sort of a newer concept back then, at least in this area, and at least certainly in the San Francisco Bay Area where I grew up. And the way it would work is this elementary school, you would have tracks, and it would be 3 months on, 1 month off. So every month you had one of the tracks of kids would not be there. And then the next track of kids would be starting. And so it was year round, and it was fantastic work because I always had work, as I said. And one time the principal took me, after I'd been there for a while, the principal took me aside and said, well, here's what we would like to do. We would like to start sort of called an intercession class. And an intercession class is you're 3 months on and then you're 1 month off. But during that 1 month, some of the kids who need a little bit of extra help come back to the school, and they have a short, it's not a full day of classes. They just have a couple hours. Actually, I think I taught a morning session and then an afternoon session, all with different kids. So it was just helping them with English, helping them with reading, helping them with basically that was it, because I wasn't, listen, your friend here is not going to be teaching math. So I agreed to this. Now, the funny thing about this was my teaching credential that I had at the time was called a 30-day emergency credential. And what this means was, if I taught, I could teach in any classroom because I had passed the tests enough to get this credential. I could teach in any classroom up to 30 days. And actually, it was 29 days. And after the 29th day, I was only able to teach one more day, and then I had to take 1 day off in order to come back and teach that class again. So it was any 30 consecutive days. That's all I could do. And the state of California, or actually I think it was nationwide, the No Child Left Behind, if you remember that, No Child Left Behind Act or bill or whatever that was, they said that at 29 days, they would have to send a letter home to the parents saying, hey, your kid is being taught by not a someone who has a full teaching credential. So what this would be is I did a lot of teachers going out on maternity leave. I would step in for their classes, but I could only work 29 days, and then I would have to take one day off, and then I could work another 29 days. And I didn't do that very often. It was very rare. I think I maybe only did that 2 or 3 times where I taught for 29 days, took a day off, and then taught for another 29 days or something like that. It was never really that long of a time. So the principal said you could do this intersession class because it's less than 30 days, and every, like 20 something days, you're going to get a new batch of kids. So we don't have to worry about sending that letter home, and you're just going to be helping these kids for a couple hours a day with their reading and writing. And I said, absolutely, I would love to do this. This would be fantastic because, again, it was steady work, and they were still very, very good about if I had a conflict, like I had a comedy show or I was flying out of town to do a college show or something like that, they were fine with me getting a substitute teacher. The only problem was now I have to leave the lesson plans for the teacher. So I did this. I did this session thing, I think, for like maybe a year, and it was really great. And I was having a lot of fun, and I was doing things like I don't know how I got in touch with them, but I got in touch with some animators, some people who wrote for animation at Cartoon Network in Burbank, RIP. Google it. You'll find out what I'm talking about. And I wrote to a couple animators and I said, would any animators love to, or not animators, but writers, people who wrote for animation, would you like to come in and speak to my kids about writing and how important writing was? And they said yes. And we got in the newspaper because writers from Cartoon Network came and visited the school. The kids loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And it was just very cool. And the principal was like, yeah, that was a great idea to do that. And then I wanted to do, I don't know how I came up with this idea, but I wanted the kids to work on their writing, but I wanted it to be like this all-encompassing project. What I came up with was this. It was like a whole series of assignments. But basically what it broke down to was that my uncle owned this isn't real, of course. My uncle owned a collection of islands in the Pacific Ocean. And ironically enough, the amount of islands that he owed just happened to be the same number of kids that I had in my class. And the thing is that my uncle didn't want to run these islands, so he wanted me to have my kids design what was going to go on this island and build it. And he wanted to build a resort on each of these islands. So long story short, these kids had to write like travel brochures. They had to design their island. They had to write paragraphs about what sort of things would be on their islands. And I had a friend of mine, Cornflake, who worked for the Weather Service. And she used to go, like, she was somebody who you would hear on the radio. It's like, oh, well, today in Boston, it's going to be this, this, and this, and you can expect snow and da-da-da-da. And I wrote to her, and I had her write some weather forecasts. So, like, I would always be like, oh, well, let's see what the weather's like for these islands. And we would tune in, and it was just, a recording of my friend saying what the weather's the island's going to be like. And then a hurricane, like, we did this slow build throughout like 1 week where every day the weather forecast was like, oh, we're keeping an eye on this hurricane. And then this hurricane came and devastated the island. So they had to write letters asking for monetary assistance in order to rebuild their islands and how they were going to make their islands better. So it was like this whole 3-week thing. It was another thing where we got an article in the newspaper about it. And I was, for someone who doesn't have a teaching degree and only has a 30-day emergency credential, I was very proud of this. And the principal thought it was great. A little bit before that, the principal introduced me to a new, I don't know the exact title, but we'll just say like a new supervisor who was going to be working at the school. And this supervisor was, as everyone in a school was in charge of making sure that the kids are hitting the appropriate benchmarks that they need to hit. And the first time I was introduced to this person, and this is not hyperbole, this is not me making a joke. Within 1 minute of talking to this person informed me that they had a master's degree from Harvard. Now, this is just in your hi, how are you? So nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm a substitute. I've been working here. Da, da, da. Well, this was, I have a master's degree in Harvard. Basically, I'm a genius. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And from that moment on, I could kind of tell that we were not going to get along. Now, the good news is they were not a supervisor that was direct to me. They were a supervisor for the whole school. So, I guess in a way they were my supervisor, but it wasn't somebody like I had to report to this person all the time. This was somebody who from time to time I might have to interact with. I could also tell right away that this person didn't like the island project and didn't think that the island project was worthwhile and didn't think that the way I taught the classroom was great. One thing I used to do was I used to have, like those paper flip charts, and I would just write down some writing rules. And one of the rules, there would be several rules. It's like always have punctuation at the end of every sentence. So check your sentences. And I'm trying to remember the exact rule, but there was a rule that was like, don't start a sentence with and, maybe. That was the rule. And you can start a sentence with and, but I just wanted to take these kids back to very, very basic things. And it's like, you got to know the rules before you can break it, right? And I don't know if exactly that was the rule, but I remember this person came into my classroom one day as the kids were working and came over and looked at that chart and really studied those list of rules. And then later in the day was like, well, you can start a sentence with and. And I said, yes, I do know that. But as I just told you, the listening audience, you have to know the rules before you break the rules. Well, this person did not like that at all. And was like, well, that's teaching kids the wrong thing. And when I got my master's at Harvard and I wanted to bash my head against the wall because every conversation that I had with this person, they had to tell me that they had a master's from Harvard. I get it. I went to a state school. I have a degree from a state school. My tiny little minuscule brain cannot comprehend what a master's degree from Harvard could be. And one day I was told that this person was going to come in and teach a lesson in my class. And I said, okay, that sounds great. Now, I remember this was right after, in the months following the September 11th attacks. That's because I knew that's when it was. And this person came in, and this person gave all of the kids a little composition book and then a black felt tip pen. And this person was leading the class through the exercises they wanted the kids to do in the book. And I was just sitting in the back watching, just, kind of perusing, making sure kids were behaving and stuff like that. And I remember there was one kid who was a little bit of a firecracker, a little bit of somebody who would want to break the rules before learning them. And I looked over, and this student, very patriotically, was using the black felt pen to draw an American flag on the whole palm of their hand, the entire palm of their hand, from the heel of the hand all the way to the fingers, an American flag, and then kept pushing his hand down on the desk to leave an imprint of the flag on the desk. Well, I saw this happening, and I just very quietly walked over. I took the pen from the student, I gave the student a pencil, and then I just returned to the back of the classroom. Well, this person saw this and said, "Why did you take that pen away?" And I said, it's all good. Everything's good. We can discuss this afterwards. No. Why did you take that pen away? To me. And I said, this student was drawing on their hand and then, pressing their hand against the desk to leave pen marks all over the desk and was not working on the assignment because they were too distracted with the pen. And this person said, oh, we'll discuss this later, to me. And I was like, okay, that's great. We will discuss it later. So after the lesson was over, I thought we were going to have the discussion. Well, we didn't have the discussion. This person just collected all their stuff and left the room without saying a word to me. And I was like, okay. I was pretty easygoing. So I was just like, okay, fine. This person, then all of a sudden, later in the day, I get a note that the principal would like to talk to me. And I said, oh, okay. I always love talking to the principal. Absolutely. Fantastic. And so I went at the assigned time to go there. And who's in the office but the supervisor, glaring at me. And I sit down, and the principal says, I don't know why there's sort of this friction between the two of you. You're both amazing people, and I enjoy you both, so I just don't know why you two are not getting along. And I said, because here's the thing, seriously, if I don't like a person, I can be in the same room with them and I can work with them. Am I going to be friendly with that person? Am I going to be best buddies with that person? No, but I can do the job, and I have done the job, and I will gladly do the job if I'm sitting and chatting with somebody or sitting and working with somebody, even if I don't like them. But, don't expect me to give you a call outside of work and see what you're doing on a Friday night. So anyway, I said, well, I have no problem. Well, this was this person. You took a pen away from a student I was teaching. And I explained. I said, well, in that moment, the student was not engaged with the lesson. The student was drawing on their hand and then rubbing it on the desk that was sort of defacing the desk. And again, very patriotic. It was an American flag, and September 11th, patriotism was at an all-time high. So I gave the student a pencil. I just was not going to let them use that felt tip pen. And this person said, you took a tool away from me. And I was like, all right. And then I swear to God, when I was getting my master's in Harvard, and I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And I just said, I will never take a tool away from one of your students again. I was all smiles. I sat through it was a very short meeting. I sat through the rest of the meeting and I left. But that's when I was like, yeah, this person and we are not going to get along. That was sort of towards the end of my career as a substitute teacher. I had very few interactions with that person after that day. It was funny because a mutual friend of mine years later brought this person up. And I was like, wait, you know this person? I was like, oh yeah, I know because blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I did not have a fun time with that person. And, but anyway, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was walking Harvey, and listen, he's a spoiled dog. And what I like to do is we will definitely walk around the block here, and there's different directions that we go so that he gets an exciting walk. But sometimes, just to change it up, I will drive to a different part of the town and let him walk there. And he always gets very excited when we're in a new part of town and we can sniff things. And we were walking along this little quiet residential street, and we were looking at Halloween decorations, and Harvey was leaving his Halloween decorations all over the bushes. And there is a campaign sign on the front lawn of this house, and it says this person's name for school, I don't know, board, I don't know what it was, for whatever. And instantly, like, all my feelings towards this person came back. And I was like, oh, hell no. I am not voting for this person. And as a matter of fact, I would vote for whoever this person is going up against. I tried to look up the results today as I sat and recorded this. It's Friday, November 8th. I have not seen the results, so I do not know if this person won their spot or not. But when I was looking up this person, it said there was an article about this person introducing themselves to voters. What do you think was in the first paragraph? That they have a master's degree at Harvard. There you go. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Grantcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I will talk to you next time right here on the Grantcast. This episode of the Grantcast was edited by Stephen Staver and made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a pledge for as little as $1 a month. Patrons at the behind-the-scenes level and above get access to a video of the recording of this show. Big shout out to all of our patrons, and a special shout out to our patron producers, Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, Vicky Sebring, Ricky Chavez, Karina, Jeff Toro, and Lee Thompson. If you'd like to become a patron and receive episodes of the Grantcast before they are released, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly pledge today. And thank you for your support. This episode of the Grantcast is copyright 2024 Saturday Morning Media Grant Baciocco Executive Producer. All rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com.
Here we go. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.